Okay. Let's just... Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Shay Ali, and I'm joined today by the wonderful Celynn Morin. Celynn joins us from London, but as you'll hear from the very exotic accent, has French influence, a South African influence. It's beautiful. And she helps business leaders achieve well-being. And what she said to me before we started, which was so beautiful, is like, she's got a lot of achievements. She's got all those accolades that you'd want in speakers, like awards and, you know, internationally acknowledged for her writing and her speaking. But she said, it's not about me. It's about the people that I serve, which is so beautiful. And what I know about her is she's just this bubble of happiness. She brings delight to every room she enters, and she does lots of fun projects as well. So recently, I know she did the champagne campaign, and it's all about bringing that joy, that life and that well-being to the world. So I'm really delighted to have her with us today. Welcome, welcome. And as I say with all inspired speakers, all our guests, if you had 10 minutes to share your wisdom with the world, what would you tell us?
It's such a great question. Hi, Shay. It's lovely to be here with you and with everybody else who's listening. I guess I'd start at the beginning and the end, and then maybe we can fill the middle in together, because I am who I am because of togetherness, right? So I came into this world because two human beings met in the Champagne countryside in France in around the early 60s. And then they left and they went to South Africa on honeymoon in 1969. And they stayed in South Africa. So it's been 51 years that they've been there. They'll be coming back to France when they're able to, considering everything that's going on around the world. So that was an important beginning. So I was born in South Africa. So I had this dual input of my upbringing of cultures, you know, the South African culture, but also the heritage of being French, which included, you know, good food and long meals and cheese after every dinner and aperitif with champagne. And that then flowed into... I was going into the middle. So let me go back to the end. So the end is, you mentioned the Champagne campaign, which is one of my latest signature workshops or masterclasses that I've put together. And what it is around celebrating well-being. So for me, it takes my heritage of being French, which is about being very balanced, and including, so being healthy, but including things that you still like and enjoy, and finding a lot of pleasure in how you approach your well-being. And one of the cornerstones of that particular piece of work is celebration, connection, curiosity, and community.
That's lovely. So I know that, you know, people are sitting at home right now. So, you know, they're thinking, well, how can I celebrate, or how can I have that community? So let's start with the community piece. What would you say to people right now about how to like continue creating that community?
Yeah, it's such a valid question. And it's become, I think when we don't have something, or when something's taken away, we could potentially really realize the value of it. Well, that's happened with me. And I have not only stayed in contact with my close circle of friends and clients, but I've been in contact with people that I don't think I would have contacted or received contact from had we not been through this crisis that we're going through. So in that way, I feel like my community is almost expanded. And the one thing I would recommend is that you definitely connect with not just people that you usually connecting with, but with people that maybe you think are okay, that are strong. I've been doing that. And then something that's very real is next weekend, I was meant to be in France, and we were going to have a family reunion. So there were going to be 30 or 40 of us together having lunch next Sunday, and we can't do that. So I took the initiative to create a WhatsApp group, and everyone today has been adding their parents. So there's the cousins, we all tech savvy, we on WhatsApp. And now you've got the moms and the dads joining, and they are so grateful. And so I've got this one community in this one WhatsApp group that wouldn't have existed if we weren't going through this. So I feel very touched by that I'm now in contact with aunts and uncles that I would never have been if they hadn't been almost forced into this position. And we're going to have a Zoom call next Sunday, and we're going to see what it's like to have 30 French people all online at the same time.
I love it. Why not? You know, so I guess what we can take from that is like take some initiative, especially with, you know, our parents and stuff that might not be as tech savvy as us. My mum loves her WhatsApp, I have to say, but you know, and creating that community around us is so important, and you know, this isn't stopping us from doing that. So the other thing that I wanted to pick on is what you said about celebration, and you know, that being part of your message. So what would you say about how we can integrate that into our lives?
Well, why that's helpful now is we know that there's definitely a lot of reasons not to celebrate, and we create our realities, and we can make, you know, there's a lot of fear and sadness. I mean, I fluctuate between fear and love, sometimes on an hourly basis, you know, and that's normal. I mean, there's huge stress. What we're experiencing, at least our generation, has never experienced something like this before. So self-compassion and understanding around that it's not going to be easy. However, no matter what we go through, there are always small things that we can be grateful for. And that's where we can bring in, you know, we don't have to wait for weddings and birthdays to celebrate. We can celebrate a sunrise or a sunset or a random act of kindness. I mean, my neighbors have been leaving me cake at my front door. It's just so lovely because they're obviously baking a lot. So I'm getting a lot of the extra cake and cookies and things.
England has got a flour shortage at the moment because we're all baking at home. I read that this morning.
And from a health practitioner, when we allow ourselves a moment of positive thinking or celebration or gratitude or appreciation or any positive emotion like love or joy, we shift our chemistry almost instantaneously. So in the moment, you can create a flow of hormones like oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin, and those make us feel calmer, more grounded. They reduce the impact of the stress hormones. So that's why I think even more so now, we should learn how to be grateful for, celebrate the small things. And celebration's contagious, right? I mean, I find if you see something good and you tell others about it, you know, it's so much better to spread that kind of news, because there's enough of the stuff not to celebrate going on without us having to spread that.
I totally agree. There'll be some people at the moment that are alone in their houses, and when we talk about celebration, they might be coming up with some resistance here, going, well, but I'm alone, I'm in a flat, now the government's going to ban exercise or whatever it is. How the hell do I celebrate that? So what would you say to that person?
I would then say, because for me, words are important, the language, the semantics that we use, perhaps celebration is too much. Because celebration is quite a big display of appreciation and gratitude. I would say, could you bring it right back down to appreciation and gratitude? Actually, those two words. So there's science to show that when you think of something that you're grateful for, and especially if you write it down, you really reinforce it. You're able to shift the way you think and feel in a positive way. So because of that, I've kept, for instance, a gratitude journal for quite a few years. And it's not like my day is all fairy tale. You know, I'm not always happy. I've definitely experienced, as I shared earlier, over the past month, extremes of emotion. But what I have tried to stick to is my routine of waking up in the morning, and on my bedside table as a visual cue, I've got this little pale green book, and then I reflect back on the day before and just try and write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And the more you do that, the easier it becomes. So I would say that's probably one of the most basic practices that you could potentially start. And you could maybe think about reaching out to people that you know are generally more appreciative and grateful, because maybe then their positivity can rub off on you, rather than, you know, being with more people that are just going to bring you back down, you know, and drain your energy.
I love what you said about having that anchor in the morning as well. You know, it could be as simple as just labeling your alarm, actually, you know, on the iPhone and something like that. To have it say something more positive, because I think the standard is alarm. And then I changed it at one point to how can I appreciate this moment? So, you know, it's this really powerful thing to, you know, let's see, how can we put appreciation into the morning? That's wonderful. So you also, I know you're passionate about helping business leaders and entrepreneurs really integrate well-being into their lives. A lot of those types of people are working from home right now, and they, you know, and I've spoken to a lot of them. They're alone, you know, maybe staring at a screen all day. What would you say to that group?
Oh, there's so much I would say. What I will share is what I've been doing for myself, because I feel like I don't have all the answers. I haven't gone through this either. But what I know is that what has helped me is to try and do 3 small things that are positive in terms of my well-being. And the structure I've given myself, because well-being is so vast. I mean, you know, we've got physical well-being, emotional well-being, mental well-being, a spiritual meaning, physical. So what I've done is I've used the structure of head, heart, and hara. Hara is the Japanese word for gut. I just like it because then it rhymes, you know, H, H, H.
I love it. Why
So
not?
try and do something every day that's positive for my thoughts and my mind, my head. Something that's good for my heart, which is about my relationships with others or for myself. And then something for my gut, which is around my tummy. So how I eat or how I move. So if you can right now, I'd say one of the most important things is to have some kind of routine. So we know that people who are most productive when they're working remotely, there's a lot of truth in getting up in the morning and doing what you would do before you would go to work. So get dressed, set up your station, have a good breakfast. Don't lounge around and kind of start working and playing with the kids and doing other, because then all the boundaries are going to be blurred. So create the routine and then try and do one small thing for your head, one small thing for your heart, and one small thing for your hara. And I'm posting every second day or so what I'm trying. And some people are commenting what they're trying. They are brilliant ideas. So after the interview, I mean, anybody who's listening to this can join me on LinkedIn, perhaps, and that can be a place where they can get some inspiration. I'm calling it Wellspiration for remote working. Wellspiration.
I love that. And you also have the Wellculator. So how did you come up with that, and how can that help people?
Oh, Shay, you're taking me down memory lane. I was in clinical practice as a dietitian for 5 years, and then I had an opportunity, this was in 2006, to work with a large health insurer. And I started doing workshops at financial institutions. And so I had to design some kind of interactive tool to present when I was doing group work, because people love to be included and engaged, and they love scoring themselves. So the Wellculator is a calculation of how well you are based on your lifestyle habits. So it's 10 questions that I take people through, and I've used it since 2006. I've adjusted it as the science has moved. But yeah, if anybody wants to take the Wellculator, it's available for free on my website. And if anybody reaches out to me, I'd point you into the direction of, I've got some videos on YouTube that take you through it. And it's a nice benchmark, especially for physical well-being. So it takes a look at sleep, supplements, food, hydration, the basics, but we're not doing the basics because common sense isn't common practice when it comes to our health and well-being. We're often very stressed and very tired.
Well, we can be, you know. Now, one of the things you use to describe yourself is you say French foodie, but I know that you've also got all these years experience in health. Now, to some people, that's not going to be a very natural match. How can you be a foodie and also be so health conscious? So how do you marry the two?
Because for me, food and anything related to health and well-being should include a sense of pleasure. And that's worked for me because of my upbringing. And I admit that that's part of my stories and my belief systems, which we all have. So we all arrive today with a certain way of being in the world that's based on upbringing and influence and beliefs and values. So maybe that could be changed. But I do believe that we can be healthy and well, or I choose to be healthy and well in a way that's balanced. So 80% of the time, I eat according to, for instance, my genetic blueprint, and I eat lots of vegetables and very healthily. But 20% of the time, I enjoy champagne. I like certain sweet foods. I enjoy chocolate. The idea is to include things that you enjoy, but not feel guilty about them. Because we're more likely to stick to a plan when we feel good rather than when we feel bad. And all too often I see women and men go on these extreme protocols and diets that aren't sustainable. And I've always said any change you make should be something that you can sustain. And so for me, French foodie means I appreciate good food. Even if I'm eating a snack, It could be something as simple as an apple. Instead of just wolfing it down while I'm working, I try and stop and enjoy it, mouthful by mouthful, mindfully. So that's how I marry those concepts.
So, you know, you are someone that I perceive as just always being very full of the joy of life. When I see you, you know, you have that energy in you. When did that, or how did you know that that was part of, you know, the message or the presence that you wanted to share?
I have never been asked that question, Shay. It's lovely. It's interesting. I think, well, we know that our personality and characteristics are formed a lot in the formative years. And my father is probably the complete opposite of me. So doesn't enjoy going out, hasn't got a large social group. I mean, you know, being confined probably won't make his life that different.
Some people
So,
are saying that right now.
and then I grew up and I had a mom, and he was an only child, and my mom was one of 7.
Wow.
So she was gregarious and out there, and she was very, very playful and fun. And I think what I did was I moved away from my father, away from my mother, and found the sweet spot, which is a lovely, I really do like being me. I'm happy in my skin. And I also am grateful because I know that there are others that aren't, that struggle with who they are, be that mental health or body but yeah, I've always, I feel as if I am in control of my destiny. So even when I have low moods, because I have in the past had anxiety and depression, I know that I can ultimately change my reality. And sometimes it's not easy, but I just believe. It's like you have a chocolate brownie recipe that has always worked. So even when you're thinking like, well, this is not going to work out, just follow the recipe and trust that it will.
So can I ask, what's your chocolate brownie recipe for getting out of the anxiety, depression? Give us some key ingredients.
The ingredients that work for me is I generally ask myself 3 questions before I do any activity or make any big or even small decision in my life. And also if something doesn't feel right, if I'm anxious or sad, or I'll ask myself like, what about that situation or that person or that relationship? And the 3 things I use as a compass are, does it make me feel alive? Does it increase my capacity to love myself and the world? And is it easy? And by easy, I don't mean that there's no challenge, but there's not huge amounts of resistance. So those 3 things should be a yes. And if they're not, then I know that I need to look into something a bit deeper.
Fair enough. And well, what about sometimes you might perceive things not to be easy, for example, and do you feel that we shouldn't be going down those paths? What would you say about that? So, I mean, for me, for example, when I wanted a career in law, you know, and yeah, you know, there'll be some people in that place that thinks, well, I want that. It's not necessarily easy, but I need to work to strive to achieve that. So what would you say about something like that?
I do think there's merit in working hard, but I think even when you're working hard, like finishing a law degree, which is a huge achievement, for me, I try and tap into my intuition and I look for the small little steps along the way. So before you graduated, there must have been things that happened that gave you a sense that you were on the right track, despite it maybe being difficult at times. Yeah, I think with that one, it's much more of a feeling that's related to intuition. And the older I've gotten, the more I appreciate the value of, for me, meditation and stillness and time in nature. The more I do those things, the more I'm able to know very quickly whether something is right for me, despite it being easy or not, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's when I'm not in nature and I'm not meditating and I'm sleep deprived and I'm just in work mode and I'm a human doing versus a human being, that I end up wasting lots of time and energy on projects and people and things that I know don't serve me, but it takes me months to realize it.
So we really need to be integrating those spiritual practices into our lives and making sure we take advantage of that. So I know I mentioned the champagne campaign at the beginning, and so I was wondering if you could tell us a little more about that. How did you start that, and what do you do with people on there?
Well, firstly, I have changed the name because I'm not allowed to use champagne, because champagne is a regulated, legislated name. So, yeah. So the champagne campaign has changed to Santé.
Santé. Oh, I like that.
Yes, which is health in French, and also cheers. So when you toast. And it started
Go ahead.
It started about 4 years ago when I'd made the decision that I was going to leave South Africa. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to come and live and work in the UK or live and work in France. Well, I always knew I was going to work in the UK because I just love being here. And I knew that I wanted to connect with my family more in France. So I called it the Champagne Campaign because it was about going back to the Champagne region. And what it is I'm now approaching leadership well-being and well-being overall using celebration, connection, and curiosity, as well as community as key points of what that means. And that for me is the champagne making process is a beautiful mystical process. So whether you drink or not, I don't drink much. But when I do, I like to enjoy what I'm drinking. And I always say quality over quantity. But for me, it's the process of going from growing the grape right through to bottling this magical drink that's effervescent. There are beautiful analogies along the way that we can use to reflect on our own well-being. So I've designed a process that takes people through that. And that can be, it can be a 2-hour talk, it can be a one-day workshop, or it can be a weekend retreat. And I launched that in December. So it's still a baby in the making.
That sounds really exciting. We have dug into already the community piece and the celebration piece, but what we haven't dug into is the curiosity piece. So tell us a little more about that piece of it. How can we integrate more of that into our lives?
So curiosity helps us keep an open mindset and helps us always stay in a process of learning. And I think that was influenced by the fact that as a child, I used to always ask why. You know, my mom used to say, I'd say, well, why is the sky blue? And then my mom would say, well, because of the reflection of the light. I said, but why is the light reflecting? And then why and why? So I have this innate curiosity, and I do love learning. I like reading and exploring new things. And if we stay curious, especially when it comes to our well-being and all the different dimensions, so physical well-being right through to spiritual well-being, it can help us to be compassionate, to understand not just ourselves better, but also those that are different to us. So for instance, I might drink champagne to celebrate, but there are cultures who don't drink any alcohol at all, but they still celebrate. So then I'm curious about that. Like, how do you celebrate then? So it brings in inclusion, which is incredibly important today.
Well, we're coming to about the end of our time now, actually, but I was wondering if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience today.
I think considering where we are today, and that as a global family, we're being brought to commune, I'd like to say connect with yourself compassionately and understand that this is not going to be easy. And then also remember to celebrate or express gratitude and appreciation and love for the small things along the way.
And how can our beautiful audience connect with you?
I would say that the best way would be to go to my website, because from there you can, if you choose to follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram, it's all there. And so the website is myfullname.com. So Celynn, not spelt like Celine Dion, CELYNNMORIN.com.
Well, please check her out. She's a beautiful breath of fresh air, and I'm sure enriching to many, many people's lives out there. Thank you so much for your time today. Stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you in the flesh very soon.
Me too. Thank you, Shay.
Okay. And I'll switch this up.